I don't feel that the new president in the States is helping any, and
do you really think that he's got something to do with this?
well, not necessarily, because
but it's setting a tone that perhaps
that it's okay now, you know, and it's okay to hate the Muslim, or it's okay to hate black people, or it's okay to tell them to go home when their home is in the States, you know. So that's just part of it all, you know, really.
Quebec City is still in shock tonight, and so, for that matter, is much of the country. What happened here last night is still sinking in, the horror of it. Here's what police say happened. A little over 24 hours ago, a man walked into a mosque just meters from here and started shooting at people who were praying, shooting them in the back in many cases. When the shooting was over, at least 6 people were dead. Many others are injured. There are still a lot of questions tonight about what happened and why, and over the next hour, we'll try to answer them. But let's start with the basic facts. Sainte-Foy is a Quebec City neighborhood where Laval University is, and it was just before 8 p.m. last night when the first calls came in to 911. Reports of gunfire at the Quebec Islamic Cultural Center. Evening prayers were going on, and there were multiple people shot. All available units in the city were immediately dispatched. A huge security perimeter went up. In the end, 6 men were killed, more than a dozen wounded, 5 critically. A man was arrested at the scene, later identified as a witness only. But about 15 minutes later, a man called police and told them he was armed, but that they should come and get him. He would wait near the Ile d'Orleans bridge. Police say that man is Alexandre Bissonnette, a Laval University student. He was charged this afternoon with 11 counts, including murder and attempted murder. As I said, we got lots of reporters on this story tonight. I'm going to start with the person who's been following it right from the first moments. That's Alison Northcott. Alison.
Peter, among the dead are a shopkeeper, a university professor, and a pharmacist, and people who leave behind friends and family members, and a city that's dealing with the aftermath of their deaths and wondering why. For many, the shock is still settling in. Mohamed Ouazani was at the mosque last night but left before the shooting.
I feel lucky because I didn't witness the event. If I stayed for 10 minutes more, maybe my life would be changed radically.
Prayers were just wrapping up when someone burst in and opened fire.
J'ai entendu, fuck you, toc, 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 toc.
This man says he saw and heard what he believes was the gunman. I was scared, he says. I didn't know what was going on. The dead were identified as 60-year-old Laval University professor Khaled Belkacemi, 42-year-old Mamadou Tanu Berry, 39-year-old Ibrahima Berry, 41-year-old Abdelkrim Hussein, Abu Bakr Thabi, a 44-year-old pharmacist and father about to buy a new home, and 57-year-old butcher shop owner Azzedine Soufiane, well known by many in the community.
C'est une grosse perte pour sa famille.
It's a huge loss, says his friend Mohammed Ali Saidan. He says he leaves behind 3 children. Police arrested one suspect at the scene and another about 20 kilometers away after he called police himself. But investigators later said only one of the men is a suspect. The other is a witness who fled the scene in fear. Radio Canada spoke with him today and agreed to protect his identity.
J'ai vu une image d'une personne qui porte un arme. Je n'étais pas conscient que c'était d'un policier.
He says he saw a man with a gun, thought it was the shooter and ran, but it was police. The actual suspect is 27-year-old Alexandre Bissonnette, a student at Laval University and a former cadet who lived near the mosque. This afternoon, he was charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. Investigators would not speculate on his motive, but an online group dedicated to welcoming refugees said activists knew him for his far-right positions on identity and against feminism. Today, at mosques across Quebec, police increased security. And around the world, flags flew at half-mast as leaders expressed their condemnation. At this vigil near the mosque tonight, shows of support and solidarity in the face of what many believe is a crime motivated by hate.
We stand with you. We love you and we support you. And we will always defend and protect your right to gather together and pray today and every day.
We're not different from other societies. We have the same devils in our society. Xenophobia, racism, exclusion exist in Quebec too. Our role as leaders is to express without any compromise our rejection of these type of thoughts and attitudes.
This local Muslim leader says he is touched by the show of solidarity after such a tragedy.
We have many kind of key contribute to society, and I want for the media to personify the dead people. Each one of it's a family, papa of family, and father.
It's not the first time this mosque was targeted. Last June, someone left a pig's head at the doorstep, and community leaders say they feared something worse was coming. There are still a lot of questions here tonight, Peter. Police say this is a terror investigation and it is ongoing.
All right, Alison, thanks very much. That's Alison Northcott. Now, as we've been watching throughout this evening, thousands of people have come by as part of the vigil that's been taking place. You can see behind me still, some are still here this evening, late into the evening. It's a very quiet, emotional time for many. Joanna Rimoliotis has been watching the vigil tonight. Joanna.
Peter, it was striking, the silence among the thousands who came to the vigil tonight to denounce the attack and to come together. Un geste, a gesture. It's a word you keep hearing, how everyone simply wants to do their small part. So thousands came to help share the burden of grief.
C'est un geste de solidarité.
It's a gesture of solidarity, he says. It's proof that Quebecers are people of peace. Praying men shot point blank. That can never make sense. On this freezing cold night, so many gathered not to understand the unthinkable, but to defy it.
Muslim or not Muslim, it's very difficult because if you can kill a person, it's you are not human. You don't have humanity in your heart.
It's scandalous, she says, and the shooter will go straight to hell. Straight to hell. Earlier today, the sound of sorrow from the leader of the mosque attack last night.
I think, yes, we have protected enough, but we say also it's not enough because somebody can apparaître and create other situation.
Dignity in the face of unspeakable horror. Céline Provençal came to offer comfort and to find some too. She was up all night watching the news unfold.
Shocking.
I couldn't believe that it was true, she says, that it happened here in Quebec. Her gesture, one Hamadi Bouhamid says the Muslim community desperately needs. Bouhamid knew one of the victims, the shop owner. Everyone seems to know. The question in my mind, he says, is are we safe? At Azzedine Soufiane's shuttered shop, more flowers and notes of raw condolence. Some who came, too devastated to speak to us. It is still so early, a community refuge now transformed into a crime scene. And while it's been a target in the past, members of the mosque who know many of the victims say they could not foresee this. Intolerance exists, he says. People make hateful slurs in shopping centers on the street. It happens, but nothing more than that. If there was an innocence before, however guarded, it is shattered now. But already there is a resolve to face tomorrow together. Peter, tonight was such an incredible show of support, but as the crowds go home, you can't help but think of the grieving families and the incredibly tough road ahead for them.
All right, Joanna, thanks very much. Well, for a lot of people who've been a part of this story today are politicians, federal, provincial, and local politicians who have been trying to talk to the people of this riding and talk to the people of the country, try to explain to them what's happened here, what it means. And one of those who's right at the kind of ground zero of this story is Joel Lightbound, who is the local MP for Louis-Hébert. And you knew a lot of these people that were in that mosque last night.
Yes, I did. The Muslim community here in Quebec City and in Sainte-Foy, where this happened, have been there for decades. Before I was a member of parliament, before I was a politician, they were my neighbors in the apartment building where I grew up. They were my friends, they were my soccer coaches, my teammates, my classmates, and it's just I feel very, very sorry for what happened yesterday.
What are they saying to you today, and what are you saying back to them?
Well, they appreciate the solidarity that the people here of Quebec have demonstrated to them. And I'm saying to them, and I think that's what all of us are saying, is that they belong here. They must not think that they don't. They are welcome here. This is their home. And we need to make this clear. And also I think the message that I want to send to them and to my fellow Quebecers, fellow Canadians, is that there's been a discourse over the last couple of years where we've seen fear of others, division, hatred of others, and ignorance that has been spread out and instilled. And this has got to stop. We need to start preaching tolerance, love, acceptance, and move away from those divisive discourses.
How do we do that, though? Like, how do you get that message out?
Well, the first thing I think is for all men and women of goodwill to stand up when they hear generalizations, when they hear intolerant speeches, when they because this leads to those kind of incidents.
You know, we have this reputation, a worldwide reputation, of being a very tolerant country, being a country where diversity thrives. Something like this happens, does it make you doubt that reputation?
No, I don't doubt that reputation, but we have to realize that there are these demons within our societies, and we must address them, and we must preach love where there is hate.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
You know, one of the things that hasn't happened in this country since December, in other words, you know, a little more than a month, is the House of Commons hasn't met. Politicians haven't got together on the floor of the House of Commons, federal politicians, to talk about the issues of the day. Today, they were back, and they were talking about this issue. Margot McDermott has the story for us from Ottawa.
It was a grim day on Parliament Hill, signs of mourning on display. Inside, a moment of silence. Many MPs moved and upset. A prime minister who has spent the last 48 hours vaunting Canada's tolerance told Parliament the victims were targeted simply because they were Muslim.
Make no mistake, this was a terrorist attack.
An attack, he said, in a country where this is not supposed to happen.
To the more than 1 million Canadians who profess the Muslim faith, I want to say directly, we are with you. 36 million hearts are breaking with yours.
A sentiment echoed by the other party leaders, political differences set aside today in the face of tragedy.
This attack offers another sad reminder that our country is not immune to terrorism, and it demonstrates that we must always be vigilant against this threat.
To our Muslim brothers and sisters, we mourn with you, we pray with you.
We stand with you, and we will never let there be daylight between a Christian, a Jew, a Sikh, an atheist, and a Muslim in this country.
The national security threat level remains unchanged at medium as investigators try to figure out the motive for the shooting.
The lone wolves and the copycats are the toughest killers to deal with. They are often unpredictable.
These last few days have laid bare Trudeau's diplomatic challenge. On Saturday, he tweeted, "Canada's strength is its diversity." But at the same time, Canada's closest neighbor is cracking down, closing its borders to citizens from some mostly Muslim countries. At a vigil in Ottawa tonight, Muslim leaders were looking for proof of the tolerance Trudeau talks about. They want action on his promise to review this country's terrorism laws that give police more power to arrest and detain.
It would at least anchor for us, and I think everybody in Canada, the sense that he's genuine with what he's promised.
Meanwhile, the government is reminding religious and cultural groups they can apply for federal money to increase security after yesterday's shooting. The deadline was supposed to be tomorrow. It's been extended. Margaret McDermott, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, time now for a little expertise on the security front on what happened last night and what the reaction has been today. So let's go to Ottawa, where we're joined by Michelle Juneau-Coetzee, former CSIS officer and security expert. Michelle, you've helped us on many times in the past. So why don't you start by giving us your initial take on what happened last night, your sense of what went down there.
Well, unfortunately, as it was mentioned, it was a fairly simple act of terrorism, not difficult to execute, not difficult to plan. But there was, make no mistake, there was some planning behind all this. The fact that he was capable to acquire an assault rifle that is not found in Canada, that means either he went on the black market or he went to the U.S. And that demonstrates definitely a certain element of planning before he committed this massacre.
It seems to be shaping up as another one of those kind of lone gunman situations. Is it too early to draw that conclusion?
Well, a little bit too early at this point. Definitely there was a radicalization process that took place with this young person. Extremism, far right, far left, religious or ideological, it remains extremism. And that's one of the problems that we're currently facing. In the entire Canada, there's only one center of de-radicalization that exists, and it was established by the Montreal government, or the city that paid for that center. And recently, the director of that center pointed out that 20% of the 680-something calls they got last year were coming from Quebec City area, and they were all right-wing extremists. So there's definitely a trend that needs to be studied, and that should worry the local population.
What's going on that would lead to those kind of numbers?
I think, unfortunately, in great part, there is also some of the discourses that have been sort of maintained within the local media. The local media have been sort of having some borderline hate discourses. They've been definitely playing on the emotion of the population, and that definitely maintain a certain sense of insecurity for people who are already sensitive to these far-right ideas. And that has to be sort of stopped to a certain extent if we want to regain the sense of community and the sense of safety that we have and we used to have.
Do you think that we've been, and not just the media, but governments and security forces have been not paying attention to this or have been blind to it? Why would this be happening?
These investigations are extremely difficult because if you have a single individual that is capable to keep this quiet for a long period of time and to plan such an attack, what we call low intensity to a certain effect, but has tremendous effect and ripples within the society, that is extremely difficult for the law enforcement. Definitely there is signs with that you've mentioned a little bit earlier that throughout the years are appearing, and the police and the governments must pay attention. But again, it is the responsibility of the government to start giving tools to the general population when a parent, a friend, an educator, a close person to a young mind is witnessing that there is some changes taking place. To who do you turn? To a specialist, to a professional that can help you. And this is what was lacking. This is what is missing, because we had a city government that had to open a center, and that's the only center in Canada. We got a serious problem with our provincial and federal governments here.
All right, last quick point, Michelle. What's the lesson in this?
I think what was very beautiful tonight to see is all over the province of Quebec and all over the world we saw great and spontaneous demonstration. Despite the bitter cold that you are currently experiencing, people went out in mass and showed their solidarity. I think this sort of movement must be now coming out. And as one of your previous guests was saying, when we hear intolerance, when we hear words that are obviously trying to build walls or separation between us, we must stand and stop that immediately.
All right. Michelle, thanks very much for your time, as always.
My pleasure. Stay warm, please, Peter.
Now, we witnessed earlier in Joanna's piece and what's still going on behind me, some of the vigil that has been going on here in Quebec City. Well, there have been similar situations right across the country today where Canadians have been coming out to mourn along with those from here in Quebec City. Gatherings obviously right across this province tonight, dozens more vigils, but there were also ones in almost every province and territory. Halifax to Vancouver to Iqaluit, and yes, even overseas, Paris and Hong Kong. Well, there was a reaction right across the country, condemnation, Canadians speaking out about what happened here last night. Cameron McIntosh gives us a sense of what was happening across the country on this story tonight.
Afternoon prayers at Winnipeg's Central Mosque. Inside, there are understandable feelings of sorrow and anger, but also gratitude for the small gestures outside that are having a big impact.
You see here the love sign here, so that's how we feel. The community is amazing. The Winnipeg's a wonderful place. Also Canada also.
Across the country, similar reactions as flowers appeared on the steps of mosques and city halls lowered flags to half-mast, while Islamic leaders urged calm.
And our message is that, we need to be reaching out to one another as members of the community.
Let's not let fear. It's a day where Muslims and non-Muslims stood together at vigils like this in Halifax.
I think it's very important to come here to show support that it doesn't matter how different we are, we're still all humans.
Or on the steps of a mosque like this one in Ottawa.
I'm just heartbroken. My heart was just really sore today.
Even in the Arctic, Islam reaches all corners of the country.
We really truly believe in community and working together and in love. And we need to show this in the face of great hate and tragedy.
Politicians of all stripes renounced the attack.
There should be no fear, ever, of worshiping your God.
Ontario's premier spoke at a mosque, while the first Muslim mayor of a major Canadian city offered this.
Every single one of us has the chance to heal the world.
Other faiths also spoke out.
We're a little concerned about some of the temperature that's growing in the world and even on our continent with respect to hatred.
Something police in many communities acknowledge as they grapple to find the right balance. For now in Gatineau, police are watching mosques.
We're going to take the time to make sure that this community feels secure.
Tonight, the mourning and reflection continues. This vigil tonight in Toronto. And also at this vigil here in Winnipeg tonight, where the sentiment here and at other gatherings like this across the country today is whatever motivated that attack, Canada is stronger than it. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, still ahead now tonight. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we want to try and get a sense of how the world seems divided on this issue right now and how that impact is drawing on Canada and what we should be doing about it. That's when we come back. And welcome back to Quebec City, where we're trying to understand what happened here last night, the horror of what happened last night, and put it into some context and give us all something to think about in the days ahead. Joining us now, two very special guests who are going to try and help us do that. Samir Zuberi organized the Montreal rally today, and Amira El Gawabi, Amira, the National Council of Canadian Muslims. awfully cold here tonight in Quebec City, down in the deep minus teens. Let me get a sense from each of you, and perhaps Samira, you could start with a sense of what you saw at the rallies you attended today.
Well, the Montreal rally was extremely well attended. The square near Park Metro was entirely full. The majority of people were not Muslim. About 80% were average Quebecer who came on out to show their support and solidarity with the victims and their families. It was extremely encouraging, as somebody who has organized within the Muslim community for many years, to see that level of support. And it really moved me personally, as many others who have been working on these issues for many years.
Amira, how about you?
Yes, Peter. So we were on Parliament Hill at the Centennial Flame, and we were actually joined by several cabinet ministers as well as the Governor General, and I'd say over 100 well-wishes supporters all gathered together. Sort of, you almost felt, our hearts were really united. It was actually a very special moment, because obviously we're all mourning. We're all just thinking about these 6 innocent victims who were at a place of worship and just senselessly gunned down. And seeing that sort of groundswell of support, and we know it was happening across Ottawa, it was happening across the country, and to see our cabinet ministers, our elected officials come out, show the solidarity, to see average individuals who are out like you tonight, Peter, freezing cold, but so determined to make it so clear that we will not accept hatred in our communities, and we will do everything in our power to show a resolve that this is not going to define us.
Well, let me pick up on that point about what's defining us with you, Samir, because I think we've all witnessed and talked about what seems like a growing intolerance in parts of the United States, in parts of Western Europe. How does Canada differ? Or are we different?
Well, I would say that we are not necessarily that different, because we aren't sealed off from the rest of the world. So the conversations that are happening within our country, within the province of Quebec, sometimes are pinning Muslims and minorities in a very bad position. Sometimes you'll have pundits or elected officials who will malign the Muslim community, who will speak in negative terms about the Muslim community. On the other hand, we also have a Prime Minister currently who is celebrating diversity. We have a Premier in Quebec, Premier Couillard, who is also giving a nod to the contribution of Quebec Muslims. But we need to hear more of that from all parties and from all segments of Canadian and Quebec society.
Amira, you pick up on that same point for a moment and leave aside the politicians and the leaders. How about just ordinary people? How do we combat what seems to be, according to some, a growing intolerance?
Well, our organization actually does document hate crimes, hate incidents, as well as violations of human rights in workplaces, in educational settings right across the country on a regular weekly basis, unfortunately. We do receive reports of Canadian Muslims who feel that they've been discriminated against, and we provide support to them. And unfortunately, we have seen an increase in this sort of concern. Hate crimes in this country against Canadian Muslims are on the rise. We've seen a doubling in the past 3-year period. So definitely, there is a phenomenon here that we cannot turn away from. We must confront. But by the same token, I think it is important to continuously sort of welcome the words of solidarity that we hear from fellow Canadians. I mean, we've got countless messages of support today, and I think that that must be what we sort of go forward with. But as I said, we do need to document what's happening, and we need people to report what's happening, and we need to find solutions collectively.
Samir, last point goes to you, and just briefly, and I asked it earlier of the local MP. Are we who we think we are when we hear these wonderful things said about Canadians around the world, about how we're tolerant and we showcase our diversity, and then something like this happens? Are we who we think we are?
In some senses we are, but it's not across the board. And we had in Quebec the Charte de Valeurs, which was a promotion of an idea that maligned the Muslim community. It existed also in the previous government, where the previous government had certain pieces of legislation that they were proposing, which again ostracized the Muslim community. So on one hand, we have voices that are calling for unity and calling for the celebration of diversity. On the other, we aren't. But I would like to underscore the importance of this event and the way in which it'll help, hopefully, reorient the elected officials and the citizenry in order to talk about minorities in a positive way, talk about Muslims in a positive way, and celebrate the contributions of Canadian Muslims to Quebec and to the country.
Thank you both very much for your thoughts on this very difficult night. Thank you.
Thank you.
When we come back in just a few minutes' time, we'll talk to some more of the people who were a witness to tonight's vigil, their thoughts about what happened. It's a cold night here in Quebec City, deep into the minus teens, but still thousands of people came out for tonight's vigil. I had the chance to go down into the crowd to talk to some of them a little while ago. Why did you bring them here tonight?
Because his friend lost his father yesterday night.
In the mosque?
Yeah.
Oh dear. And have you talked to your friend today?
No, he's not coming at school today.
No, I'm sure not.
Yeah.
So you're here in solidarity, thinking of them together. Well, I'm very sorry to hear about your friend.
Yeah.
It's good that you're here to support him and his family.
Yeah.
What are you feeling when you're doing this?
Feel sad, feel very sad. And I thought instead of being sad at home, I'd come here and be sad with other people.
A lot of people.
Yeah. I don't know if people are crazy now. They believe everything they see on the internet and they don't check their facts. And I don't feel that the new president in the States is helping any. And
do you really think that he's got something to do with this?
well, not necessarily, because
But it's setting a tone that perhaps...
that it's okay now, you know, and it's okay to hate the Muslim, or it's okay to hate black people, or it's okay to tell them to go home when their home is in the States, you know. So that's just part of it all, you know, really.
What are you thinking while you're here tonight? What has this meant to you?
Well, I'm here for those who have fallen. I'm here, and I think it's really sad what happened. No one from no religion, no races should have gone through that. No one.
Do you think it says something about us and the world we live in today?
Sadly, I think, yeah.
You've had 24 hours to think about what happened last night. What do you think about it? What does it mean to you?
I think it's an insulated incident, because since we came to Canada many years ago, we found that it's a peaceful country. People are very nice, and Quebec City is wonderful. We never thought that an incident like this will happen.
So when you say an isolated incident, do you think that we should be careful not to overstate what happened?
Yeah, now, because it's happening everywhere in the world, many possibilities of people which are not understanding the tolerance, not understanding what is to live in peace. They think they can solve problem of immigration like this. or I don't know. Really, it's difficult to think about why this happened. It's a big shock for us. We didn't understand, really.
I don't think anybody understands.
We cannot understand. I'm sorry, it's difficult to make a judgment.
We're going to take a break from the Quebec City story. When we come back, Wendy will be here with the rest of the day's news, and there was quite a bit of it.